Okay, good evening runners, welcome and thank you for sparing part of your Sunday evening, or if you're watching us a little bit later on, part of your precious time to actually pick up a few ideas and hints and tips on how to run a successful SR Chester Half Marathon in May. So we are 15 weeks to go, it's plenty of time, and the idea today is to give you some hints and tips to enjoy your training and hopefully get more out of it, and just help you be a little bit better maybe than you thought you could be on your own. So I'm Chris, one of the race organisers. I have with me Dave, who's sat next to me. We also have a stellar cast of stars with us tonight. We have Mark from Katie Copeland Physiotherapy. We have Danny Webber from Webber Performance Nutrition, and we have Karen Jones from our main race charity Northern Lights, and they'll all be bobbing in and out to present different bits and help us answer your questions towards the end. With also thanks to Amanda, who's looking after the filming for us. Amanda also looks after all our social media as well, so big thanks to Amanda. And controlling us all tonight and keeping us order is Elaine. And those of you who are here on the training run this morning, Elaine's the one who makes all our flapjacks every month for the training runs. So thank you everyone for joining us. So I think it'd be really good if we can get some interaction from you. We're here talking to camera. Well, it's a mobile phone. Most of us do everything on our phones these days, amazing gadgets. But it'd be great to have some interaction. So if you're just watching and a little bit shy, just give us a thumbs up. If you're really enjoying it, give us a bit of love. That'd be great, just so we know you're there. But also, it'd be great if you've got any questions as you go along. Then message in on Facebook, let us know what your questions are, and we'll try and answer as many as we can towards the end. And it'd also be really good if you can let us know what you're running with us this year. I think the focus for this seminar is on the SR Chester Half Marathon, but many of you will know that we also organise the Aldi Chester 10K, which is just a few weeks away now on the 8th of March. And then we've got the MBNA Chester Marathon and Metric Marathon on the 6th of October, is it this year, Elaine? 4th of October, says he was organising it. There you go. So just let us know which of our events you're running, or if you're running all three, going for the 2020 triple, then fantastic, just let us know. And if you're doing the triple, if you're doing a metric triple or full triple, that'd be fabulous. Just give us an idea who's out there, who's watching. And certainly if you're watching afterwards, again, please let us know. Feel free to contribute. And also, I think we're going to have Mark, we're going to have Danny and Karen and what have you. And if you've got any questions directly for them, then leave a message on the Facebook feed, because they will also be going on directly and can answer any of your questions for you and come back to you. So that's really important. Right, let's get on to the next section of the presentation. So, for those of you new to running, or relatively new to running, what we're here to do is help make this more successful and more enjoyable for you. And really what we do hope is that you're not just entering the SR Chester Half Marathon as a one-off event, that you actually enjoy it so much that you want to carry on running and maybe enter some more races going forward as part of your fitness and healthy lifestyle idea. So it's really massively important to us that you carry on doing it. It's not just a one-off. So I think one of the things we need to think about quite early on our half marathon journey is, what am I trying to achieve on the half marathon in May? And it's really important to keep that in mind when you're setting your targets to how you're going to train. For most of us, a lot of us, it can just be to finish, get through the race and finish. And ideally with a big smile on your face and being totally thrilled with what you've achieved at the end. For some of us who've run before, some of you have run before, it could be to improve on a previous time. And for those of you who are more competitive, it can be to beat a friend or colleague who's also running. And it's a great motivator in these sort of events, is to challenge a couple of other people, friends or colleagues at work, to actually take part and join as well. And then again, if you're actually a bit further along your running journey, it's actually to do the best time that you possibly can. And there's hopefully something for everybody in here, and certainly in all our events, there's a place for all of you. I think what we're here for every single runner, right from the person who finishes first, right through to those who finish a little bit later on, towards the back, but with huge great smiles on their faces. Every single one of you are just as important to us. And I think the important thing for us is that you enjoy the experience and want to carry on running. That's really important. So how do we help to achieve that? A key thing that worked for me is motivation and tips. And apologies for those of you who've seen our webinars, presentations before, but one thing I always say, if I can run a half marathon, then so can you. I think my background as a child was avoiding sport at any opportunity, at all costs, really. And it was only as I got into my late 30s and had children, I started looking and thinking, I'm not very healthy here. What sort of example am I setting to my sons? And I thought about, right, okay, it's maybe time to get yourself into order. And for most people, you can achieve it whatever starting point you're at, and that's also important. And again, if you know somebody who's thinking about it and say, I can't do this, then maybe they can. Just give them a little bit of encouragement. My backstory is at about 38, I was tipping close to 22 stone and totally ashamed of myself, and thought I could never do anything. And then one morning I woke up and thought, you know what, I'm not going to carry on like this, I'm going to do something. And for me, the challenge was, right, well, what's the worst sport, the most difficult sport for me was running, or the one I was most scared of. And then I thought, well, what's the biggest challenge to run? And me in my little mind at that time, it was to run a marathon. So on that morning, having had no real prompting, I sort of set myself the challenge that I was going to run a marathon. And it took me 16 months. 16 months later, I actually ran London Marathon for the very first time on the week of my 40th birthday. And that's something that's actually transformed my life, changed my life, and has brought me to where I am today. Still not quite the ultra slim, lettuce eating elite athlete, but somebody who runs most of the time with a big smile on my face and wanting to carry on. And as I say, running's been a massive part of my life for the last 15 years plus now, and so I'm sort of proof that if you lose the weight, you can keep it off. Diets don't work, but if you keep some form of regular exercise, then it can massively help. And just take a lead, take an example. I'm not the only person, there's plenty of people who've done this. So never ever think, I can't do this. Anybody can have a go at this. So that's a little bit about me. The next thing I think is think about a reason you're running. We all have our own reasons, whether it's for charity, whether it's to lose weight, whether it's to be competitive. It's think of those reasons, have those reasons and keep them in mind. And then always remember why you've entered the race. You've entered the race for a particular reason, and keep that in mind, and make sure that you don't get overstressed or over obsessed with different things. Just if you're there as a first time and you want to finish, and hopefully finish with that big smile on your face, then keep that in mind when people say, oh, come out with me, we'll run a bit faster tonight. No, leave them, or just let them go on ahead, run at your own pace and make sure you enjoy it. Because the important thing at the end is, having done this race, that you finish having enjoyed it and you want to carry on running, and that way, that is where you can get the long-term benefits from it. So the next step really is to set a realistic goal for your finish time. And if you have a time in mind, just make sure it's realistic. Look at your training, where you've been. You can stretch a little bit in terms of where you are now, but it's really important that you want to see that goal as achievable. So it gives you something, a training target, but make sure it's achievable. And a really good thing for me, it worked for me in terms of keeping that motivation going, is tell your family, tell your friends, tell your colleagues about the race, because this will increase your motivation. Because when the odd day when you're thinking, oh, the weather's bad, or I don't feel up to it today, and you go into work the next morning and say, how's your training going and what have you, you're not really going to turn around and say, oh, I couldn't be bothered last night. It's just really something that helps motivate you. If you're training to a schedule, then have a look at that schedule, tick it off, write down what you did, and that will certainly help when you look back and see, wow, look at the journey I've achieved over the 15 weeks or whatever on your build-up. Get into a routine. Routine really helps. If you can, if you do have that amount of flexibility for working during the day or shifts or what have you, the best thing is to get out there and run, either before work, at the beginning of the day, or when you get back before you get trapped into anything else. And certainly the deadly thing for me from experience is don't let your backside hit the sofa, because it's like there's super glue on it in the evening. Once your backside hits the sofa, it's a real effort to get off it. So, and the other thing is, we've got to remember that we do have different things happening as we go through the weeks, and sometimes life gets in the way, something crops up that you can't get out of. Then try and adjust, move your run, switch things around a bit. And if you miss the odd run, don't worry about it. Not everybody, very few people do every single run on their training plan. So if you miss the odd run, don't get down, don't worry about it. And another thing is to remember that not every run you go out on, you're actually going to enjoy. I think we've all had that, haven't we, Dave?
Certainly have.
And I know I go on some runs, I think, yeah, everything should be okay. You get out there and it's an absolute shocker. And you just think, for whatever reason, it's just not happening today. And that happens to most people. Even Mo Farah can have the odd one like that. In fact, I was chatting to him about it at London Marathon last year and was saying that. Yeah, so even gold medals don't come easy. So it's really important. Remember, bad days do happen, and sometimes there's no apparent reason at all. So if you're out on the run and it's feeling tough, you're not injured, you're not feeling ill, then just carry on. Sometimes after a couple of miles, you can work your way through it and everything's back to normal, you're enjoying it. Or if you do a run and it's a particularly slow time, you put the effort in, don't worry, don't think you've lost everything. It's just a one-off, and you go out next time and everything will be fine. If you've got regular routes that you do, that's great, and it can help if you watch your progression over the weeks. But also it helps to actually vary your routes. There's plenty of apps these days, whether it's Google Maps, whether it's Strava, there's all sorts of apps where you can actually plan a route to make sure you get the mileage you want. And try and vary them a bit, it just takes the boredom away from it. Certainly when you're looking at, those of you looking for specific goals and you're looking to get faster, or when your runs are getting longer at weekend, just break the run down into shorter chunks. I think once you're getting, if you're on your first 6 mile and think, oh, I've never run 6 miles before, I'm really nervous. Just see it as a 4 miler like you did 2 weeks ago, and then to treat it as 1 extra mile at a time. Once you're actually running, these miles go quite quickly. And in terms of things going quickly, if you've got a running buddy or somebody from your club or a friend who's actually willing to run with you and you can chat your way around, the runs go really, really quickly. And actually having a running buddy is a really good motivator as well, because if you say, right, we're going out on Sunday morning at 9:30, then you're less likely to miss out on it, you're going to do it. So it's again a way of increasing motivation. One thing I was really bad at when I started, I just had zero self-belief. I just thought, I'm not sure I can do this. I really don't think I can do this. And don't think that way. You've set yourself this target. Hopefully you've looked at a plan, you've given yourself enough time, so believe in yourself and convince yourself you can do it. And that's really important. And another thing to remember is quite often, if you're running 3, 4, 5, some people, some crazy people even run 6 times a week, don't they, Dave? We did that when we were not quite so old as we are now.
I'm very old now, but I can't do it.
Dave, really old.
Really old.
Really old. Here comes my normal bit about Dave. Dave is an absolute advert for running and what it can do. How long have you been running, Dave?
At least 35 years.
At least 35 years. And do you know what? Dave, like me, didn't start till he was nearly 40. So how about that?
It's not far off.
So again, it's something that you can fit into your life, enjoy and carry on doing. It's important, as I said before, that just believe in yourself. convince yourself you can do it. Each run that you're doing, each training session that you're doing, I can do it. It doesn't have to all be at the fastest pace or at the hardest effort level. It's just get out there, do it, and believe in yourself. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch over a little bit now. We're going to invite Karen to come over and join us. Now, Karen is she's just coming over now. Sorry. Quick cash change. Welcome, Karen.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, Karen is chairperson, chairman. What are we these days? Chair of the Northern Lights Children's Charity. Now, Northern Lights Children's Charity, charity we became aware of a few years ago, and it is totally run by volunteers for the benefit of people in the Cheshire, Merseyside, and even the North Wales areas. And they do a fabulous amount of work, and a charity that we really believe in. So I'll just hand over to Karen now to talk a little bit more about Northern Lights.
Thanks for inviting me here tonight. Thank you very much. So Northern Lights is a children's charity that takes children with life-limiting illnesses to Lapland. Children are aged between 6 and 11, and we've been taking, and the charity started, we've been taking children to Lapland since 1987. We attempt to take 20 children every year together with medical staff and volunteers over to Lapland for a 5-day holiday, 5-day holiday, and unfortunately it costs us £2,500 per child to be able to take. So events like this really help boost the money coming in for us, and we really appreciate that people want to run for Northern Lights. As Chris said, we're a team of volunteers, and that team of volunteers really expands over the day and over the time of the race, and we're there to support and to help you along the way. But really we hope that running for a charity will give you added incentive to help you train, to really help you train and compete and complete the race. As I say, we're there to support you before, during and after the race. We provide you with running shirts and an online giving page, and hopefully you would then feel part of a bigger team. You're there you'll see everybody running in the same t-shirts or similar t-shirts. So I've got on here at the moment. So we're all everything's in purple. So we have running shirts and volunteers all there. We'll be there to give you medals at the end of the race.
And that's so everybody, you don't have to run to Northern Lights to get a medal from Karen and her team.
No, they'll all be there to be able to hand out the medals. And we're going to have this year, as long as everything's alright, we're going to have a meet and greet area, so we've got a gazebo and stuff that we can put up so you can come and find us. Quite often on the days it's such a busy day, and we're all busy doing different jobs and stuff to help, but we're going to hopefully have a gazebo there that people can come and talk to us, and we can tell you a few more stories about where the money's going that you're hopefully willing to raise for us. So if anybody wants to join us to help raise money for these children to go to Lapland, either send us a message on Facebook, or I think you can change your application online and tick that you want to run for the official charity. So we'd really appreciate if you can do that for us.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Karen. Just before Karen leaves, just something that one of the things I really appreciate about Northern Lights is every single penny that you raise goes directly towards the holidays of those children. There are absolutely no salaries, no swanky offices, no expense accounts. Every single penny goes directly towards the charity, and that's one of the reasons why we think that this charity is so worthwhile. So thank you, Karen, and good luck to your team, and carry on with the good work.
Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Okay, Dave comes back now. Here he is, dashing in. Right, we're going to talk a little bit more about kit and shoes. So, big old pros as we are, we've seen this, we've done made all the mistakes over the year. So, and as we are in February now, but it's been a particularly mild winter, hasn't it, Dave?
Yes,
we've had no freezing weather, a bit of rain, but no snow to contend with this year.
Not yet.
So, it's advice, really. One thing, you can run in rain. We can all run in rain. We were born waterproof. Okay, so what we're going to do now is think about dressing for the weather. So if it's cold, if it's a little bit chilly, you stick your head out the door, whoa, chilly. Then put a couple of layers on, but don't put a huge thick coat on, because you will find after you've run a mile or maybe two, you start to warm up, or the weather changes a bit. It's much easier to take a layer off than actually take a whole coat off and be running around the area, start naked or practically naked and frightening all the locals. And that gives running a bad name, quite frankly, doesn't it?
It does, Chris.
It's almost as bad as Borat in his mankini, for those of you who are old enough to remember. So again, thinking about that, dress for the main part of your run, not just the first mile. I think look at the weather. If it's 10 degrees, one layer is normally enough. You might feel a little bit chilly for the first 5-10 minutes, but you'll soon warm up and you'll be glad you didn't put too many layers on once you get to the 2nd, 3rd mile. So I think, is that Karen over there just saying, thank you, Karen's going home for dinner now, so thank you, Karen, enjoy your dinner. Shoes are important in terms of what we run in, wear the right shoes, and in terms of a little bit of advice, and again from experience, it's important to have the right shoes, and if you're not sure, it's worthwhile going to a local running shop. I think here in Chester we've got Up and Running, where you can get a gait analysis done, and they will tell you whether you need support in certain areas, and they will suggest the best shoes for you. A couple of additional tips as well is to keep your toenails relatively short, and in terms of, certainly if you're looking at half marathon, definitely for marathon distances, you will probably advise to go for between half a size and one full size bigger than the shoes you normally wear. This is because when you're out and you've been running for a while, sometimes your feet can expand, so that gives them the room before they start to run. And it's certainly, if you're looking at buying some new shoes, don't go straight into your longer runs with them straight away. Break them in around the house for a day or so, and then go a couple of shorter runs before you go out on your longer runs. You just make sure they can mould to your feet a little bit more before you go out on longer distances. One of the great things these days as well are like GPS watches. I think they're a real great training aid, and those who are a little bit geeky, they can automatically load up to apps like Garmin Connect or Strava or what have you, and it just helps record and progress what you're doing. And I think one of the things we talk about, and it's almost Dave and I doing these things, but we had a young lady come up to us at our training run this morning, didn't we, Dave? And what did she ask you?
Well, it was all about running bras. I don't know why she asked me, but there you go. She wanted us to make sure that in this webinar that we actually covered the subjects. That's probably the wrong expression, actually, because we were talking about nipples on men.
Look, guys,
blood.
when we get to long runs, plasters on your nipples, guys, it stops you having the rivers of blood.
Yeah.
I said, well, what about us girls? We need to be comfortable as well.
And you never mention us, she said.
Yeah, she did. So here we go. Here we go.
So there are lots of sports, I believe.
We believe. Not having tried them ourselves.
That's right.
No.
There are lots of sports bras available, and there are fitting services. So do yourselves a favour, girls. Go and get properly fitted, and you'll be better in your running for it.
And be comfortable when you're running. So
Yes.
yeah. So thank you for that, Dave. Very eloquently put.
Thank you, Chris.
There you go. Right, so it's over to Dave now. Dave is actually an experienced and very high quality coach. He's coached some of the pros and not so pros over his time, haven't you, Dave?
I was waiting for the sting in the tail.
So Dave's going to talk a little bit about the key principles of training now. So.
Yeah. Well, as it happens, while I was sitting over there when Karen was talking, I had an email, and it's from Deirdre of Doncaster. And I'll read it out. Please help me, Dave. I'm training hard at least 5 days a week, yet all this produces is fatigue and injury. I'm crocked. What am I doing wrong? And then there's a little bit more. I also thought I'd have a bash at a half marathon 2 weeks after completing my first 10k. It was horrible. Deirdre, don't you listen to any advice? That's a catalogue of things you shouldn't really be doing, so I'm really glad you've asked us to sort you out, and we're here to do that, aren't we, Chris?
Absolutely, yeah.
So, principles of training. It's all about effort and recovery, Deirdre. So you maybe run a good session one day and you recover the next day. And then you train for a week and 3 weeks maybe, and then you have a week where it's lower down as a recovery. So the key thing is recovery. You can do all the work in the world, but if you don't recover properly, then you will get fatigued and you will get injured. That is so important. I can't emphasize it enough. Joking apart, you need to recover. And for those of us who are knocking on a bit, Chris.
Thank you for incorporating me in your age group there, Dave.
Then, you know, it's even more important. Gone are the days when I could race 2 days consecutively. It's more like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think what Dave's saying is that is really important. You can put your body under stress, but it's only when you actually have your rest days that your body actually gets stronger. It repairs and gets stronger. So it's really keep that in mind.
Yeah. So it's all to do with adaptation to the training load. You've got to get that load right, and then you do it, and then you recover, and your body builds on it, and you move on. So it's all about progression, and that's where schedules come in. We provide these schedules that you can follow, and they have a built-in progression, so you gradually move up to higher loads of effort and to achieve your target.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I think we've got those on the training run page of our website, and we've got sample training programs for novices, improvers, and also more advanced sort of runners. And it's really choose the plan that's right for you and where you are in your running journey.
Yeah, because Chris earlier on talked about having a realistic goal. Whilst I'm a half marathon runner, I couldn't go out in 2 weeks' time and run a marathon. Well, I suppose I'd get round, but I'd be in bits at the end of it. So it's a matter of selecting a proper goal. When you're doing your long runs, for instance, you need to make sure that you run at a pace which is suited to that long run. So typically that will be 30 seconds per mile to 60 seconds per mile longer for each mile than you would normally do.
Yeah, that's slower than your target race pace.
Absolutely, yes. And that is because if you were doing everything at race pace, at the long runs, then you would crock yourself, so you'd be fatigued. So your training plan and the ones that we give you, they have hill sessions. Of course, hills are great. There would be all kinds of little speed sessions, especially in the intermediate and advanced schedules, and they're all there to gradually build you up to become a better runner. So Deirdre, all I can suggest is that you get stuck into the schedule and you follow it, because it does have the rest days built in, and I'm sure you'll be absolutely fantastic, and I look forward to having a report from you at the next webinar that we do.
Yeah, and don't try and do too much too soon. Take your time, make it progressive, allow yourself time to recover, and then set your next goal. And talking about Deirdre from Doncaster, who is a regular contributor to our webinars, isn't she, Dave? A valued contributor. If anybody else has got any questions, don't forget, message us in with them, and we'll cover as many as we can off at the end. So, any more on your side, Dave?
No, I was just going to say that in terms of progressing on certainly on the long runs, no more than 1 mile a week extra to be added on.
Yeah.
You know, it's that kind of some people say 10%.
Yeah.
Any progression should be no more than 10%, because you're just getting yourself a bit into the red zone.
Yeah. And you're enabling your body to adapt gradually to the increased trading load. You're getting stronger and you can cope with it better. The people who get injured are normally the ones who build up too quickly or push themselves too hard.
And we've all done that, haven't we, Chris?
Well, yeah, but following your advice, we're less likely to, Dave. So thank you. Thanks for that, Dave. We'll now move on to Mark Curtis from Katie Copeland Physiotherapy. Mark's going to talk. Do a few sections for us now, but Mark's going to kick off with avoiding injury. So over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, just to really carry on from what Chris and Dave were saying, that most injuries will actually occur from doing too much too soon. So it's overloading injuries, repetitive strain injuries. When you're actually running a marathon or a half marathon, you're doing the same thing on a regular basis, week in, week out, and the body likes variation, and it's that repetitive nature and that overloading that gets it. And it's people that want to do always 3 things with runners. They want to run further, they want to run faster, and they want to do more hills as well. And it's when they do a combination of those usually. So it's great to do speed days, it's great to do some hill days, and you're going to obviously have to do your distance days, but break them up. Don't try and do a fast run up a long hill with a long distance and get your PB. It's not going to happen. Make sure you chop and change it around. Building up the training in a controlled manner, like Dave was saying, and working to a plan is really important. When you are training, you're going to get niggles, you're going to get aches and pains, you're going to get muscle soreness, and it's making sure that you listen to your body, because these aches and pains will settle, as long as they're only mild discomfort. They will always settle as long as you give them enough time, and that's the important bit, is the rest and recovery, like we were saying. Make sure you space your runs out, make sure that you have days where you almost plan which are going to be your main rest days, because life gets in the way, especially after your long runs. Make sure you have enough rest and recovery, and don't run again really until that soreness is under control. Sometimes it doesn't need to have gone completely,
No.
but it needs to be under control again.
And quite often you might feel at the beginning when you're not injured but you're aching a little bit. I think the key to any session is to warm up properly.
Yes.
And whatever your run is, make sure your first mile is relatively easy paced, just to let your body warm up, get used to it before you build into your main session.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the things that somebody said to me when I first started running was even the Kenyan world record holders, they start all their training sessions off with a walk. So there's no need to blast straight in there.
Yeah. So as well as the rest and recovery, it's, well, the big part of that rest is sleep. Sleep deprivation will increase your risk of injury. So it's making sure that you get the right amount of sleep. So if you don't sleep that well, and you have relatively little sleep normally, make sure you make an effort to increase that, because it will reduce your risk of injury. The other thing that will massively reduce your risk of injury is for strength and conditioning. So it's making sure that you're not just running. The running will improve your cardiovascular system quite quickly. You'll feel better, you won't be as out of breath, but you'll start to feel that your legs are getting heavy, and that's not so much to do with your lungs and your heart. It's the muscles aren't good enough to do the activity that you're asking them to, that effort that you're putting through. So making sure that you do, outside of your running days, some strength and conditioning. That doesn't have to be in a gym, that can be at home doing kind of sport specific body weight stuff. So it's doing squats, lunges, calf raises, and building up a little bit of strength outside of your running days, because that can be really important.
And classes such as like Pilates are equally as good, aren't they?
Yeah.
So it's great. Again, you can be doing something as a class with some friends to go along. It's really helpful and will complement your training.
And if you don't know where to start, there's lots of things online. There are specific classes, like Chris said. So there's Pilates classes for runners, or you can consult a PT, go and see a local physiotherapist to get some advice on that to try and avoid injury. That'll really help. The other thing that can help is actually looking after the muscles a little bit more. So it is doing things like stretches and things, but sports massage can be really helpful. Using a foam roller, I know you've had a webinar recently on foam rolling and how to use that. It's a great tool for runners to keep the condition of the muscles, the flexibility, the blood flow. It's a really good way of reducing the risk of injury.
Yeah, I know for myself sometimes it's just as a special treat to yourself every now and then. Sports massage can be amazing. If you go with a good sports masseur, they will be able to spot and ease off some injuries before they actually kick in. So it's certainly worthwhile thinking in terms of maintenance and rewarding yourself for what you're doing. It's a treat every now and then.
Absolutely, yeah. Another good one is resting heart rate, so monitoring your resting heart rate. This can be a really good sign that you're either getting an illness or there's some overtraining, extra stress on the body. You might not know what that is, but there's a good indication that if your resting heart rate isn't what it should be, and that's maybe happening too frequently, that
and
you might
if it's getting higher, isn't it?
Yes, rather than lower.
Rather than low, it's higher.
Resting heart rate is normally about 60 to 100 beats per minute, depending on who you are, your general fitness levels anyway. But
some people are lower, and don't worry if you are lower. If that's your normal, don't worry about it. It's understanding where your normal is, and if it starts moving above that in any significant way.
It's 10 points apparently lower than that. Take it in the morning as well. Apparently that's the best time to take it. So an easy way across the pulse there, just underneath the thumb on the wrist, and you'll get an idea of what your normal resting heart rate is. And if that does drop, start to increase, then that's not right. If it's dropping and it's steadily dropping, that's a good sign actually that you're actually potentially getting fitter with the training. So that's good. The other thing obviously is wearing the correct gear. You've already talked about that quite a bit with the keeping warm and the right trainers as well. Just to add to the trainers a little bit, I would again say go to a shop. Don't buy them online because you don't know if they fit you correctly. It's not important if they're expensive or if they're cheap. It's making sure that they're comfortable. That's the most important thing.
And you don't have to have the brand spanking 2020 model when the 2019 model that's in the sale does exactly the same thing.
Exactly, just a different colour probably.
Yeah.
And also while you're out there, another injury that could be is not being seen by a car or a cyclist or a dog or something. High vis, so make sure that you're very visible when you're out running. Head torch if you're at night as well is really useful. Lastly as well, so it's something that people don't like to do, but ice baths can be very, very helpful, especially after your long run. They have been proven to reduce muscle soreness, they reduce metabolic activity, reduce swelling, constrict the blood vessels, and that can really improve your recovery rates. So it doesn't have to be done every time, but after your long run they can be really helpful if you are suffering with your muscle soreness.
I tried them once or twice.
It doesn't have to be that bad, honestly. Apparently, with the research, they say about a temperature of about 10 degrees for 10 minutes is all it takes. That's not freezing. You don't need a bucket full of ice in the bath. It just needs to be cold, not freezing, and that's effective, apparently.
I'll think about it. Thank you.
All right.
Cheers, Mark. Thanks for that. Mark will be back in a little while. Now come back to Dave and talk a little bit more about training programme.
Well, we've covered most of it already, Chris, but what I would say is that it's a bit like if you're going on a journey and you're not quite sure where you're going and you haven't got a map. A schedule, the kind of thing that we're providing, a training plan, gives you that roadmap from where you're starting from to where you're going to finish. So we've got, as we've said before, we have got schedules, we've got training programs on our website. They've got to be a little bit generic, so it's not going to fit you maybe absolutely, but have a look at them and I'm sure you'll find something that will suit. And of course there are lots of different training programs on the internet. The Runner's World website has plenty of them, and I think I probably nicked ours from there.
And I did with a little bit of our extensive experience as well, Dave. So, yeah, but I think it's important when you're choosing your training plan, choose one that's right for you. Don't think, oh, this is what Mo Farah and co use, I'm going to follow this one. It will not work for you. So choose one that's right for your own goals and keep you motivated and keep you going.
Sure, yeah.
So thanks for that, Dave. We'll talk a bit more about pacing, and certainly novices and first timers, they turn up and we talk about our training runs and say, right, well, I don't know how fast I'm going to run, I don't know how fast I run. And I think the important thing, certainly if you're a novice looking to compete your first half marathon, is don't get too hung up about pacing. Over time, over a little while, you will work out what pace is roughly right for you. And for what we say, certainly for novices and when you're working along your running journey, is a running pace that works is one where you can potentially have a conversation. Not full-blown natter non-stop, but have sentences and what have you, chatting as you're going along. And that actually helps enjoy, because if you're pushing yourself too hard all the way through, you're not going to last as long. Hard training is for short, intensive bursts.
And be prepared to make mistakes as well,
which
is why you can practice your pacing quite nicely on, say, a 5k or a 10k. And that's one of the reasons why at the moment we don't have pace runners for our 10k, because a 10k is the perfect opportunity to actually learn how to pace yourself
Yeah.
rather than have some people holding your hand.
And while you're building up your mileage and your initial journey towards your first half marathon, your longer runs, and these are typically in our programs, we put them in at the weekend, they're designed to gradually increase your endurance and time on your feet. They're not designed to develop and so that you run them faster and faster every week. The idea is purely what you're trying to get out of the long run is distance and time. It's nothing about pace. And that's really important to remember. And again, Dave talks about target pace. If you're not sure what your target pace is, then relate back to what we were saying before. It needs to be a pace that you can relatively comfortable at. Running isn't easy, but where you can have a little chat and a conversation as you're going along, and that's a good indicator. I think we're talking about pacing, and I think certainly when you're choosing one of our pace groups, I think if you're within spitting distance of Chester, then come along to our training runs. It give you an idea of pacing in advance of the race. Our training runs are at the beginning of each month, and if you look at the training run page on the website, you'll see the dates. And we have actually paced groups at each one of those, so if you can come along, try those pace groups. And what we say to people at the beginning, don't be afraid. If you're not sure, drop down a pace group, and once you get going, if you feel comfortable, then you can pick up the pace afterwards. It's much better to feel stronger and pick up the pace rather than feel you're overdoing it and feeling a little bit deflated.
Yeah, we refer to the pace groups as buses actually. So if you're on the bus that's just a little bit too fast, we'll hop off it and get the one that's coming up behind.
Yeah, and I think those of you who are certainly building towards your half marathon in May, hopefully with us, that'd be great. A great idea and a marker to work out what your likely half marathon time is to run a 10k a couple of months beforehand. And we've got our LD Chester 10k coming up in March, and for those of you who haven't entered or are thinking of, you need to enter pretty quickly now because we think it's going to be full within the next couple of weeks. And the reason I mention that, even as a novice, if you can run your 10k time and do whatever time you do in the 10k, say 2 months beforehand, if you double that and maybe add 10 minutes, that will give you an idea of a likely finish time for a half marathon. And that's really something that you can keep in mind as a personal target. So 2 months out, you should have an idea of what's achievable. Now obviously that's only going to be achievable if you carry on doing the training and upping your mileage towards the half marathon. And I think again, advice from us, certainly towards novices and improvers, the best to underpace it if you're not sure, instead of going out too hard. And if you're feeling good 3/4, 2/3 of the way in, then gradually up your pace. You will have learned, and maybe next time you're in a race and you've trained right, go a little bit faster, and that's the way to do it. Again, you'll be finishing strong, finishing well, and finishing with that really important smile on your face. So thinking about pacing, Dave's going to chat a little bit more about our awesome team of pace runners and
Awesome
what their
is the word.
job.
Yeah, well, I'm very privileged to look after a group of about 40 pace runners that I draw from for our various events. So if you're watching out there, hi guys, thanks for all your help.
And ladies.
Well, I mean, the overall.
Okay.
Yeah. And, all right, and ladies. Yeah, pace runners, they're selected because they're capable of running consistently at particular paces. For instance, if somebody, their best effort at a half marathon at the moment is, for the sake of argument, 140, I would get them leading a pace group of say 150, so they're at cruising speed rather than flat out, and we work on that kind of basis. They are fantastic people. They give up their time and time again to come to our training runs, apart from when they pace at races, and their objective is to knock out the miles consistently at the pace that I've asked them to do. There'll be a slight variation to take account of descents and ascents in the course, bumps in the road you could say, and their objective is to get the rest of the bus that they're driving, driving or conducting, if you like, to the finish line within a few seconds before that target is achieved. So there's just a little bit of slack built in, so they can sort of waft them over the line.
Yeah, and the paces are brilliant encouragement. They're there to encourage you. And certainly if you come along to our training runs, they're mines of information as well. And like us, obsessed with running and happy to chat away to their heart's content.
Yeah, and for the half marathon, there are pace groups at 1:30, 1:40, 1:50, 2, 2:10, 2:20 and 2:30.
Yeah, and those times are the actual finish times for running the race.
Yeah.
So there's a pace group for 90% of the runners really here. Some people don't like pace groups, they want to run on their own and push themselves, that's great. But if the pace group's going to help you achieve your target, then go for it. Certainly feel free to join in.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Dave.
Okay.
We're now going to move across to Mark, who's going to demo some stretches. Now, sometimes in the past, if you've been to our seminars, you've been subjected to me doing very poor stretches. Mark is the absolute expert now, so over to you, Mark.
Well, first off, just having a quick chat about it. Everyone always asks, why should I do static stretches before a run? Should I be doing a warm-up before a run? Why do I need to do it? Will it help me run faster? Will it help me reduce the risk of injury? And there's a lot of conflicting evidence out there and advice. And the long and short answer is they don't really know if it helps or not. There is some good evidence to say, though, that static stretches before performance can actually reduce the power output of that muscle. So it's a good idea to do more dynamic stretches before you actually perform, and do static stretches for flexibility in between your runs, like when you're doing your strength and conditioning and your days off the running, if you've got any areas particularly of tightness that you need to do. So with the general advice before a run, that's the most important thing that people are always asking. Dynamic stretching to each of the major muscle groups, so you're looking for your quads, your hamstrings and your calf.
A non-technical person, Mark, will remind me what is dynamic stretching and what's static stretching?
Right, so a dynamic stretch then. With the static stretch first, that's the easy one. It's your typical stretch where you'd hold the stretch on the muscle and you'd hold for a long period of time without any movement at the end of range of that muscle.
So they're the ones, like by the time I'm getting to the end, my legs are starting to shake and what have you, like those.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not doing them right, obviously.
No, exactly, yeah. A dynamic stretch is different. It's where you're lengthening the muscle under some load, but you stop at that end range and then you return straight away. So you're putting some strain through it. It's not passive, it's more of an active.
So you're not really holding the stretch, it's within a movement.
Yeah, it's within movement. So you're putting a load through it, and I'll demonstrate it so it should become a little bit more obvious. But you're putting a load through it with movement, slowly and controlled, and you don't hold that stretch. You just go to the point of stretching back. So it's a good way of warming the muscle up, and it's a type of stretching and strengthening at the same time.
Okay, thank you for that.
If you have got any areas of specific tightness though that you need to work on, static stretching, foam rolling and things can be important as well. But again, I'd leave those for after the run, for in between on your rest days and things, that'd be more effective. But also once you've done your dynamic stretches on each major muscle group, then like you said, warm up into your run. So doing a brisk walk and then slowly building into a very gentle jog and then build up to your actual running pace normally, and that's when you start the run properly.
Right.
Okay, so if I demonstrate for you three of the main muscle groups, so your calf, your quadriceps and your hamstrings, and we'll just do a static stretch on each of them very quickly and a dynamic stretch on each. Okay?
Leave you to it, Mark, you're the expert.
So we'll start with the calf then. So the calf at the back here, really important for propulsion with running. So a static stretch, you'd have this leg that you're stretching at the back and then leaning forwards, keeping the knee straight until you feel that pull down the back of your leg. Hold that stretch, and with a static stretch, you're looking for a good 30-second hold and you're doing 2 repetitions of that. Okay.
And I remember one of the important things you said to me, Mark, was to actually feel that stretch a bit more, is push your heel into the ground and you will feel that stretch
push
more.
the heel down, yeah. But you never want to force a stretch. It always needs to be a gentle stretch. You're encouraging flexibility rather than trying to force it, okay? As you're going through the stretches, you can try and slowly improve your flexibility, okay? A dynamic way of doing that is same kind of position, but if you're going up with 2 legs, and then down with 1 and feel a stretch at the end, and then back up again, slowly down, so you're helping it up. So it's that lengthening slowly down, which is the dynamic bit. With that, there's no hold at the bottom, you just repeat again for a minute instead, okay? With the quadriceps at the front, everyone's done that before, doing a static stretch onto your quadriceps, you pull the heel right up into your bottom, okay? Keeping the knees together, and then stand up tall, hips forward, so you get that stretch there. Hold for 30 seconds, and you're doing 2 sets of that, so it's a minute. The way that you do that almost in a dynamic way, one of the ways anyway, is a reverse lunge. So if you've got the leg that you're stretching at the back there, and then you're just dropping down and back up, and as your knee goes down towards the floor, you start to feel that stretch. Again, don't hold it, just get to the bottom, come straight back and repeat that for a minute, okay?
And don't worry if you can't get the full range on these, that Mark can, because he's a pro, the rest of us are mortals.
When I demonstrate the hamstrings in a second, you'll see I'm not. The hamstrings are very tight on me. You only go within your range of movement, so as soon as you feel that stretch, you return again. Don't overstretch, like we said. And then with the hamstrings instead, the typical hamstring stretch, you'd have the front leg forwards, okay, and then bend the back knee, and then slowly from the hip, keeping your knee straight, lean forwards until you feel that stretch in the hamstrings, yeah? Again, holding for 30 seconds.
So your hamstrings are all the way down the back of that leg, aren't they?
All the way down there,
yeah.
From the hip all the way down to the knee there, okay? Hold for 30 seconds and doing 3 reps of that. Or, again, just standing on the leg this time, and then as if you were going down towards the floor, but lifting the opposite leg, and again you'll feel a stretch down the back of the leg, and then return again, okay? So again, that's more of a dynamic stretch. You're not holding that stretch at all. You get to the point where you just feel the pull, and then back up again, repeating for a minute.
Okay, thanks for that, Mark. Just remember, you don't have to remember all that straight away from now. The whole seminar will be pinned to the Facebook page for the next week. And just looking at it, Mark's stretching section starts at about 48 minutes in. So if you want to come back to that, then you can do, and remind yourself of that one. So we're going to move on to injury and dreaded illness. Now hopefully you'll be able to avoid that, but not always. So Mark will carry on a little bit on that.
Okay. So again, really, the first indication of illness or injury can be that resting heart rate for the illness anyway. So monitoring the resting heart rate again is a good idea. If you do feel a cold, flu, any bugs on, the general advice is to stop running really until you're rested and recovered, and then start your training again after that. Allow time to recover. Make sure you ease back into your training gently once that cough and cold has gone, okay? Because stressing the body even more when a lot of its energy levels, energy resources are focused on trying to get rid of the infection is important, and to put more strain on it's just going to hinder things really. Okay.
So the best way of recovering is what you're saying, Mark, is ease off, let your body's energy concentrate on recovering. Absolutely. And then get back into your training.
Yeah. The one that you can be a bit more proactive really is if you get injured. So again, it's likely if you're training for a half marathon that at some point you're going to get some aches and pains and niggles that will come and go quite a lot, and that's perfectly normal. But if you get a persistent injury that's not settling, or a sudden injury really, if you twist your ankle or your knee or something happens, then everyone's heard of the typical RICE advice. It's your rest, ice, compression, elevation. That's a bit outdated really now. Well, one part of it is anyway, the rest part of it. The new acronym that we tend to use now is POLICE. So it's protection, optimal loading instead of rest, ice, compression, elevation. Okay, so the protection, the P part of it, you want to, if say for example you sprained your ankle, you can't put your weight through it, it's no good walking on it and causing lots of pain. It's a good advice to have some elbow crutches or something to take the weight off and rest it, or have an ankle support on whilst it's injured to actually give the ankle some support. The optimal loading bit, the O and the L, instead of rest. Rest is only going to make you stiff, weak, and you're going to lose your fitness. So optimal loading, if you can still train in other ways to work around the injury. So if it's a running injury, for example, you might be fine to do cycling, you might be okay to go swimming, which doesn't put strain on that body, but at least you're doing some training to keep your level of fitness up rather than just sitting on the couch and feeling sorry for yourself.
Eating chocolate and crisps.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that I have any experience in things like that.
Yeah, so trying to train around it is really important. And then really the optimal loading. Running's a high load exercise, especially on the legs. There's a lot of impact, repetitive forces going through it. It's plyometric, there's a lot of explosive energy needed. And you might not be able to do that if you've got an injury, but you might be able to do, like I said, strength and conditioning, squats, lunges, strength stuff in the gym, something like that, which might be okay for the injury, but it's just not quite there to do running. So it's loading it up correctly, that you're not irritating the tissues, you're allowing them to heal, and that will get you back to running quicker.
Yeah, and don't forget, if you've got any particular questions, feel free to message in. Mark will be having a look at the page and he can get back to you. And again, for a quick diagnosis, it's really worthwhile. If you're training hard to achieve this and you're really not sure, you think you've got an injury, the best thing is to actually get it looked at and find out. And if you go and see Mark or one of his team, what have you, they will be able to advise you on what is best to do. And knowledge is power in these things. You're going to recover far more quickly and feel better about it. So.
The body is exceptional on healing itself. It does it all the time, as long as it's given the optimal environment to heal. If you're doing the wrong things, you can delay healing. So getting back into the running and the training as quickly as possible is making sure that you get the right advice, the right treatment. And there are things that we can do to help from a physio point of view. So if you do have any questions, do go online and post something. I'll get back to everyone with any help that I can, or give the clinic a call and we'll see if we can help you.
Yeah, and certainly I think post-race, for all those massaging and aches, Mark and his team will be there doing post-race massage at the race. So they're part of it. So certainly come back and part of it. Talking about chocolate and crisp when you're feeling low and getting things all wrong, Danny's going to join us now. So thank you, Mark. Danny has worked with me as a hopeless case over the last 6 months and has really been a revelation to me in many ways. And so Danny is Danny Webber of Webber Performance Nutrition. Now, like myself, you don't have to be a super honed athlete to get great advice. So we'll just hand over a little bit to Danny now to talk a little bit about nutrition and hydration.
Thank you very much, Chris. Yes, good evening. I'll try and keep this short and sweet. But basically it's just that final piece of the puzzle as to what all the other guys have been saying. It is looking after your body. It's particularly with the food that you eat and everything that you drink to support your training. Make sure you maximising those energy levels, not putting that additional stress on your body when you are training, and helping your body recover properly, and practicing everything that you're doing in your training in order to make sure your body knows what it's doing and how to utilise that energy come the half marathon or any race that you're doing. So from now until the race, it's getting the basics right, and all athletes are exceptional at doing that. That's what makes them better than others, and that is the little boring things like getting enough sleep, eating at the right times, drinking plenty throughout the day, reducing alcohol intake, especially around your training. As Mark said about the sleep aspect of it, it does increase the risk of injury and illness if you are getting less than 6 hours a night. So trying to aim for that 7-8 hours. With regards to fueling your training, it is utilising the carbohydrates as they are your primary energy source. So eating a substantial meal or a good quality snack in the hours beforehand. If you've not eaten since lunchtime and you're training after work, say 5-6 o'clock, then you need a good quality snack in there. And that can be something like a cereal bar or two. You may want a small pot of yogurt with some fruit and nut and some honey, some rice cakes with something on. Anything like that would be really good. With your meals throughout the day, it's knowing where your next meal is coming from. So having that planning and preparation to make sure that you're not reaching through the cupboards, you're not stopping off at petrol stations, things like that, to make sure you've got good quality nutrition regularly. And with your training, especially your long runs, it's practicing those fueling strategies come race day. So if you are, and then depending on your time, and you're looking, you know that you're going to need 1, maybe 2 gels max during your race, it's utilising them in your longer runs. So you're not just rocking up on race day without knowing, firstly, how to open it, and also making sure that you're getting it in and your gut is trained well enough to utilise it efficiently.
It's giving you that energy boost partway through the race, and certainly do it in your training runs as well. And one thing certainly happens, we'll be providing on race day the High 5 Aqua gels, and try a couple of those in your training on your longer runs. I mean, you sort of don't wait until you desperately need it, you're running out of energy. About half, 2/3 of your way into the run, have a gel, have it with a good glug of water afterwards, because that will help your stomach absorb it, and that energy will then kick in and take you through the rest of the run.
Absolutely, yeah. And so with any race you're doing, it's being familiar with those gels as well. So with the half marathon, practice with the high fives and the energy drinks that will be available. Otherwise, you bring your own, because you train with them and you know what works.
Yeah.
So coming up to the day before, as I said, with the carbohydrates, they are your primary energy source. So carb loading in the day before is important for all runners. It's not just for those who are running at a very fast pace. It's going to help you get through the race.
That can actually help in your longer runs as well.
Yeah,
I know as we get closer to race day, and the week before we'll be doing another webinar, and Danny will be talking more specifically about what to eat and when to eat the day before race day. But certainly your longer runs, it's getting this sort of thing right is important.
Absolutely. So if you are rocking up to a 10-mile run, and that might be strange for you, you've not done it before, so it is practicing those additional carbohydrates to making sure you are fueling well for them.
Yeah.
So it's increasing your carbohydrates with each meal and keeping it simple. It's not trying to stuff massive amounts of fancy foods like quinoa and brown basmati rice and stuff. Keep it nice and simple to reduce that fibre content so it doesn't feel heavy, and it helps you actually eat more as well. So focusing more on the white rice, white breads, maybe not potatoes, because they're very filling.
But this is in the day before, it's
this
not
is all
part
the day
of
before.
general
Yeah,
nutrition,
this is not
it's the day
general.
before, and I think certainly if you've got any questions on this, like that, the other members of the team here today, if you've got any questions, drop a message on it. Danny can get back to you. If you want any specific help, if you've got some specific goals or some specific dietary requirements, then Danny, certainly go to Danny for some help. So,
yeah, more than happy to help. Yeah,
so that's brilliant. Thanks ever so much for that, Danny. And one big thing before we move away from that is hydration. Make sure you're properly hydrated. We talk about the mythical 2 litres a day. 2 litres a day, when you stack it up in a bottle, sounds a huge amount. But when you have it throughout the day, you consume down 2 litres a day.
Yeah.
And it's making sure you are properly hydrated. The classic test is the colour of your pee, the pee test. Ideally, your pee should be a light straw coloured. If it's darker, the darker it gets, that is the more dehydrated you are, and you need to gradually increase your hydration. Don't overdo it though, because to overdo your hydration is also quite dangerous.
Yeah.
So brilliant, thank you for that.
Thank you, Chris.
So we'll see what questions we've got. We've been running an hour, we'll take it a little bit tight. I think we've had a few questions, but I think we've covered the majority of them off, haven't we, Dave? Yeah. So if anyone wants to kick in with any afterwards, we'll keep an idea online. Dave, you've got any parting comments for us?
Just wish, Chris, you hadn't talked about water, because I need to go very quickly.
Well, thanks ever so much. Again, if you get a chance, let us know you've watched, let us know you've taken part, leave any questions for us, and good luck with your training. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to seeing you hopefully at our training runs, but definitely on race day. So thanks again and happy training. Thanks for all our team who've been with us tonight. Thank you.